Hi guys, and welcome to Between the Sessions. Today's video is talking you through a model called the Basic Cognitive Model. And this is normally introduced very early on in treatment because it's pretty much one of the foundations to cognitive behavior therapy. The kind of name gives it away. And the idea behind the cognitive model is looking at how our thoughts impact on our emotions and our behaviors. Let's look at this a little bit more. So first off, one of the most common mistakes that people make in our thinking is that we believe that situations trigger off our feelings. This just is not the case. But often it's a common mistake, like I said. So for instance, often we have people who say maybe driving on the motorway makes me feel anxious and anxiety. It isn't true. What actually is going off is the cognitive element is missing. So if we look at it again, we have the situations, the feelings, and we have that third element which is really important, and that is our cognitions. So what's actually happening in this situation is that we have our situation triggers off thoughts or cognitions, and then from the thoughts and cognitions, the cognitions trigger the feelings. If we were to look at that example again, let's say that we're driving on the motorway and we had a thought that I might have an accident. It's the I might have an accident that is triggering off the anxiety. So we can see here that actually our thoughts are more the driving force behind our emotions than actual situations. In CBT, we also look at this and we expand on it, and we look into something called a 5-area model. This 5-area model is something very commonly used in CBT, and it looks a bit like this. So we have the situation that we're surrounded by, and then the other 4 areas of this 5-area model are our thoughts, our physical feelings, our emotions, and our behaviors. And all of these are linked together. So let's look at a different example rather than the motorway one. And imagine you're walking down the street and you hear people laughing in the street. You may get thoughts that they're laughing at me, I'm stupid, which would then trigger off physical reactions such as your heart racing, you might start to feel sweaty, which would then link into an emotional reaction such as feeling embarrassed, having low mood, feeling anxious, which then the behaviours, what we do with all this is we may start ruminating on those negative thoughts, looking for more evidence that supports it. We may avoid walking down the street and maybe turn away, and camouflaging. Camouflaging, when I'm talking about this, is like maybe, wearing extra clothes, wearing a hat and things like this. It's these thoughts and the behaviours that link into cognitive behaviour therapy. So understanding that is a big part of it. But it then leads to the question of how can we use CBT to improve how we deal with situations like these? Let's go back to what I was saying. It's our thoughts that drive most of this forward. So when we look at our thoughts, one of the most influential ways and one of the most foundational ways of using cognitive behaviour therapy is to look at something called cognitive restructuring. And it pretty much explains what it is. If we can restructure the way you think about things, then hopefully it gives us an option to reduce the impact that emotion may be having. This is key when working with anxiety. It's also very influential when it comes to working with depression and other disorders. I use 4 main versions of cognitive restructuring, and they consist of a compassionate response. So if you were to look at the videos on this channel around using compassion focused therapy, that is one way we use to restructure our cognitions. If that doesn't work for you, there are plenty of other ways of working with this. So another one that is commonly used is continuum work. Continuum work works more on those kind of beliefs around the I am statements. So if I said I am a bad person, and I may be experiencing something that has a negative reaction to it, maybe in a situation where something bad happens, remember, it's a situation triggered off the thoughts, and I start to think I'm a bad person, I may think I'm the worst person. A continuum is actually saying, hang on a minute, let's take a step back and let's look at that reality. What really is a truly bad person, and what is a really, really good person? And when we evaluate those 2 ends of the continuum, we can see actually that most of the times we move ourselves further away from that original initial reaction. Remember, yet again, another reinforcing evidence here that it's our thoughts that drive that emotion forward rather than the actual situation itself. Yet again, if that doesn't work for you, there are other examples on here. So for instance, another typically commonly used one I normally use in therapy is something called cognitive diffusion. And the idea of diffusion is, imagine that your emotions and your thoughts are linked together. Every time you have a certain thought, it creates a stimulus that has a reaction. What we need to do in diffusion work is there's simple techniques I can teach you to take a step back and learn how we can break those 2 things apart, so no longer they fuse together. It is pretty much cognitive restructuring. It's just a way of diffusing the reaction rather than just looking at examining the thoughts. And then finally, the most commonly used thing that I use perhaps in 60% of my work is something called thought records. A thought record is a really detailed and effective way of managing and assessing and changing our thoughts, because it gives you multiple options here. What it does is it gives you a track record. You can write down your thoughts in situations and then look at them later on, and we can look at them together, and we can then look at how do we change those thoughts. In thought record work, we're normally looking for something called a hot thought. A hot thought is a thought that's fueling that emotion, and that's what we look at kind of restructuring so it has less impact. Let me show you a general idea of how cognitive restructuring can work looking back at the 5-area model. So if we looked again at this model again, remember before we was looking at the example around hearing people laughing in the street, and we looked at the fact that they're laughing at me, heart racing, sweating, embarrassed, low mood, anxiety, and there's behaviours around rumination and walking away. Remember these two bits here, our cognitions and our behaviours. If we was to take that away and saying we've gone through and we worked through cognitive restructuring, and instead of having that initial thought of they're laughing at me, was able to have more rational, balanced thoughts, like they could be laughing for a joke, they could be laughing for loads of reasons, it's nothing to do with me, I'm just going to ignore them. If we have that cognition in our heads, our physical feelings are more likely to be just normal heart rate, more focused on what we're doing, our emotional state may be more calm, content and happy, and our behaviours in connection to all this would be that we'll be getting on with the day and we're just completing the tasks that we set out to do. You can see here by changing and reconstructing those thoughts and those cognitions how it can have an influential factor on all the other things there. I hope you found this useful, guys. The idea of this is this links us into the other videos that I would like you to watch. If you're in treatment with myself, I'll guide you through those. If you're in treatment with Artie or one of our other colleagues, they'll guide you as well. If you've stumbled across this channel and you've just found this interesting, please by all means watch the other videos, listen to the information, and then hopefully practice some of these things yourself. We can always improve in how we think about things, and we can always reduce the amount of emotional negativity we have because of our thoughts. Hope you found this useful, guys. Please follow the next videos in whichever order we've asked you to watch them, and we look forward to seeing you again on Between the Sessions. Take care, guys. See you later.